What's up, fam? This is the day the Lord has made, and we're here to rejoice and be glad in it. I want to welcome you back to the Hope TV as we're presenting today the Financial Freedom broadcast. It is certainly a pleasure and an honor and a privilege to have you to view this program on today. It's my prayer that you're safe and that you're prospering, that you're being healthy, and that you're looking forward to coming out of this pandemic unscathed. I want to thank you for your support of the Hope TV, and if you've been blessed by the program, any program of the Hope TV, consider subscribing to the channels, following the pages, liking, and sending those links to people that you think can benefit most from it. Your support so far has been absolutely overwhelming, and I'm grateful to you. Those of you who are watching via Apple TV, Roku TV, and now Twitch, as well as Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, the House of Hope Atlanta page, the Edith website, and as well as the House of Hope Atlanta app. Thank you so very much for your support. It means the world to us. We just want to bring empowerment and some inspirational content and have an aspect of entertaining faith that can inspire and inform and equip you for the life that God has prepared for you. Today, I'm excited about financial freedom because we have invited someone back to the platform because he's such a resource and such a wealth of knowledge and information shared with us incredibly. Many of you who didn't see the first episode with him on it, you need to go back and check it out. He's been pastoring for 40 years. He is civically engaged. He served as a Secretary of State of the state of New Jersey. And he's led his church through a program of economic revitalization and empowerment that has literally changed the world. And from a ministry that he started with this church there in New Jersey, it's now grown into a global moment of empowerment, the D-Free Ministries. I'm so happy to have back with us today our brother and our friend, Dr. DeForest Soares. How you doing, Dr. Soares? Welcome back to Hope TV and Financial Freedom. How are you, sir?
You got to slow down. You know, a lot of us responded to this pandemic initially by going virtual and changing the way we do what we do. But what I found in my own life and what I've been watching you do is respond as if this is a sprint. And you know, if you're running a sprint, you put all into it 100% because you're not going to be running that long. But this, I think by now people know this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. We don't know exactly how long this pandemic is going to last. We don't know when it's gone, if it's really gone. And so guys like you are going to have to pace yourself because we may never get back to what we used to consider normal. And we're going to need to have a long distance strategy and not just a short-term perspective. So I want you to pace yourself. You can't do 8 shows every day live yourself because that's not sustainable. So I'm doing fine, and I want you young guys to really be careful because you want to think through the sustainability of your model and of your strategy. But having said that, I admire you, I respect you. That's why I'm willing to come on with you on about 92 seconds notice and hang out with you today. So God bless you, man.
Well, exactly what you said, I completely concur and share with our team and everybody who's involved. I'm not going to be doing this by myself, and right. It's so important because you're exactly right. This is a marathon, and I don't think it'll ever be back to normal. And
no, I don't think we'll ever
new
be
normal
back
has to
to
be developed. And so you're exactly correct.
That's right, new normal.
You know, we were talking earlier about the impact that this is going to have on your ministry and my ministry and ministries everywhere, just even in terms of the people that you've had to bury over the past few weeks. People don't realize that. And I think that's important, though, because I think even that has not just a grieving aspect on the church, but even a financial aspect of the church in terms of you having to bury 20 people. I mean, can you talk about that for a moment and just what that's done to you emotionally as a pastor?
Sure. You know, shifting to virtual services really wasn't hard. We've been streaming 20 years. And like you, we've invested in our technological infrastructure. I got a full-time technology person on staff. And so shifting how we do worship, changing how we do prayer meeting, Bible study, Sunday school. I mean, that was pretty much a flip of the switch. Now, it was different for a lot of people, but in terms of an operation, we didn't have to do much to add to who we are and what we have. Financially, we've done well. People have been giving online through the years, and many of our older saints are mailing checks in. The greatest stress factor on the church, on the culture, and on my ministry has been these deaths. We're getting 2 to 3 deaths a day. Either church members, in large churches like ours, Pastor, we get it all, and so we get a multiple of what's normal, or it's family members of church members. And when you have a high performing church members expect the church to respond to their needs, even if the need is not sitting in the pews. And so typically what we would do is dispatch officers, we would dispatch clergy, we would have food taken to the house, we would gather, you know how we do it. I mean, Black folk take death very seriously, and that's when our community really comes together. The inability to do that has been, I think, the most dramatic aspect of this season. We have people in nursing homes that shut down for visitation a month ago. And so we've got family members who have not been able to see their loved ones in nursing homes, only to wake up to a telephone call from a nursing home administrator to say, your mama's dead. This has been a traumatic impact, and I think we're going to need a spiritual, therapeutic remedy for this for months, if not years to come. Having to do a funeral by Zoom, having a funeral on Facebook Live because you can't allow more than 10 people in the room. This has been stressful. It's been traumatic. One of my wife's high school classmates died this morning, and his wife has never paid a bill. His wife has never had to handle business. His wife doesn't even know who to call. So it's this in-depth aspect of ministry that really tugs on not just your time, but tugs on your emotions, and it really reduces us from what the public sees when they see us preaching to crowds and being on TV. We're down to the most finite dimension of ministry, which is pastoral care for people who are bereaved. It's a phenomenal season, and only God can give us the strength to do all of what we do and to tend to that with integrity.
You know, it's amazing that you said that, just the emotional trauma, of losing people and not being able to see people as a pastor who cares for the people. And I was thinking about it, and this was why I wanted to talk to you today, because I think, not only we have to, we're adjusting in terms of how we provide pastoral care this season, as the things you just mentioned, but my concern and what I've been really prayerful about is when we look at D-Free and what you did in terms of establishing that program, eliminating over $1 million worth of debt within your congregation in less than a year, and expanding that and developing curriculum, and now it's gone globally. It deals a lot with that individual, and with that person. People are freed up. They can be more of a blessing to the community in terms of what they invest, etc. But I was really wanting to talk to you today because I think that what you have instilled in terms of principles for D-Free in many ways now may need to be applied to churches, because what you've done at First Baptist and what others have done and what we're trying to get to is how do we create that margin, not just for individuals, but within the institutions and within the churches. Because now I think as we go forward, I think it's a good time now for churches to reconsider what we've done, what we've invested in, and how can we move forward so that when we come out of this, when the next COVID-19 occurs, we'll have more margin in order to do ministry. So what do you suggest today for churches in terms of reducing expenses during this time as we prepare to get back to whatever the normal is going to be?
Yeah, it's interesting you would say that, because I hadn't really thought about it until you said it. I actually wrote a chapter for my book on the institutional implications of D-Free and my publisher didn't include it because my publisher wanted the book to focus on the individual. And I have thought in the past about publishing it as a little booklet myself for pastors. Here's the point. We say to people, you should have 6 months of cash available, because if something happens, like this pandemic that was unforeseen, like this shutdown of jobs, millions of people without work, if something happens and you have to make a transition personally, you should be able to live without income for 6 months. Well, that principle is now urgent for churches. You know, I preached at the National Baptist Convention twice a year for 3 years. They just stopped inviting me. And I was telling them, I told them, listen, if your church is living Sunday to Sunday and your members are living paycheck to paycheck, then one little incident, one little crisis, one hurricane, one bad blizzard, one economic trauma can wipe you out. And as you know, many of our churches are living Sunday to Sunday. And it doesn't take a pandemic for most of our churches. It takes a bad snowstorm or hurricane to really throw us in the tailspin. The other principle that we teach in D-Free that your members have really bought into is to live below your means. And many of us allow our vision to undermine our budget. That some vision is unaffordable. And just because God told you to do it doesn't mean God told you to go into debt trying to do it. And so what we've tried to teach churches, I'm working with a church right now that has a significant decrease in revenue even before COVID-19, that if it's right for our members to live below their income, it's right for our churches to live below our income. And so in our budget at First Baptist, we budget to spend 90% next year of what we brought in last year, which guarantees that our growth will give us a good 20% surplus every single year. We've had a surplus every year at First Baptist since 2005, because we plan to spend less than we bring in. That's after salaries, that's after mortgage, that's after missions, it's after giving to Lot Carey and other organizations. We plan to have that on the side. And so if our church had been shut down completely for the rest of this year with no virtual worship, we could have survived and paid salaries because we have a reserve. And that's what I want pastors to take seriously. Now, what it means is what we had to do, Dewey, we had to stop letting folk eat every time we had a meeting. We were spending thousands of dollars on food because we got this beautiful kitchen and this nice fellowship hall. And so every time the ushers met, every time the nurses met, every time the missionaries met, they wanted to have a meal. We had a full-time chef. So I took, long before the pandemic, I turned the full-time chef into part-time chef, and we have strategic meals now. Jesus ate a lot, but he didn't eat all the time, you know. So we have to start looking at every expense category and do institutionally what we've been teaching people to do individually, and that is to find our spending leaks. Find out where are we spending money that we really don't need to spend to fulfill the mission and the mandate that God gave to us.
Wow, it's absolutely, that's an incredible rubric that every year your budget is based on 90% of the income from the previous year. Did I hear you correctly?
Sir. Yes, sir.
And so that automatically gives you margin there, and in anticipated growth would all go to savings. Let me ask you this, because I think that's I'm gonna appropriate that this year as we start our budget preparation for 2021. I'm gonna follow that model because we've been putting some things in place. As you know, we just entered in a building program 10 years ago, and it's been pressure after pressure. I've never had more intense pressure in my life in the past 10 years, but I do know going forward, you know, I want to be able to, I want to come out of this and go back to that same amount of pressure. So how do you prepare going forward? And you talked about eliminating certain expenses. Is there any more? You talked about meals. What else did you do, or what other areas do you think churches can look into their budget to eliminate um, in terms of creating more margin? What do you think is, I don't know if you have thought about a preconceived rubric that you would utilize. What's needed in terms of church budget?
Well, we also made a change in our health insurance. You know, health insurance is just astronomical. And for
Indeed.
years, the church paid for 100% of the health insurance for all of our staff. And what we began to do was have the staff, we started with 5%. And then we've gone up to, I think, it's 7.5%. But we looked at that. And every single expense, we stopped buying flowers. You know, we used to buy flowers just every Sunday, just nice, and they're beautiful. But you can get yourself some plastic flowers, Doc, that look just as nice as real flowers. And you don't have to water them. You don't have to change them. And if you do want seasonal flower, you can get some, put them in the closet, bring them out. And I have not gotten one complaint because of plastic flowers. People watch us online. Nobody say, "Well, I would watch you if y'all spent more money on flowers." You know, uh, you know, we go line by line, and I review it every Friday. Every Friday, I get a 7-page financial report of every penny we spend on anything, and I don't wait till the budget for next year. I look at it this year. Too much money on anything. I want to make sure that we arrest it, because we can't live as if we don't have a financial responsibility. Yeah. So we look at everything from insurance to flowers to food. Lord knows we were spending money on food. I mean, I don't know what it is about the Black church. We just want to eat every time we gather. We want to eat, and we want the church to pay for it. So we're pretty lean. We still support missions. We built houses in Haiti. We're building a church in Ghana. So, you know, God does provide. But, you know, he told the prophet Haggai, he said, you know, y'all are putting money in bags with holes. So you put the money in the top and it falls out the bottom. So what you want to do is close up the holes to ensure that the church is using its money in a responsible way. You know, I was sitting here while we were getting ready, just thinking about this. You know, the name of this broadcast is Financial Freedom. You can't have freedom if you don't acknowledge that you're in bondage. The only reason to promote freedom is to break the back of bondage. And the Bible says that the borrower is in bondage. The borrower is slave to the lender. But we see bondage in racial terms only. And the reality is there is some racial bondage. We know that. No one knows better than Black folk about racial bondage. But there's also spiritual bondage, and there's also financial bondage. And until we are willing to identify the bondage that we're in, you know, there are a lot of things we just don't need personally or institutionally, but we do it because we do it because we do it. And I think this pandemic is going to force us to rethink everything we do and to assess whether or not it is really critical. Is it a want or is it a need? Is it a want or is it a need? You know, theologically, Dewey, what I told your folks when I was there, this whole idea of wants and needs, I never knew that people had failed to give serious attention to wants versus needs. So in our workbook, the D3 workbook has a whole page where we ask people to list their wants and list their needs. And the first time I did that, I could see these young millennials scratching their head. They had never given concrete thought. Now let's look at the theology. Forget the economics. Let's look at the theology. The Bible says that God will supply all of our needs according to his riches and glory, right? Needs. But if I've never distinguished between my wants and my needs, I could believe that God in the word lied, because I've been praying for 20 years And God has not provided it. But what I've been praying for is not a need, but a want. And if God has provided my need, but I haven't acknowledged it because I'm confused between my need and my want, I've got a theological crisis based on the lack of ability to distinguish between wants and needs.
My God, my God. That is absolutely rich, sir. Wow. You know, man, that is so important. So every Friday you get a report of the
Every
expenses.
Friday,
You go
y'all.
through it yourself and you make
I
a
go through it
decision.
personally. It's year to date. It's income compared to budget, income compared to last year this time, plus or minus, and then it's for the whole year, and then it's 7 pages, and then I look at how we're doing compared to how we said we were going to do, and by Monday morning, any adjustments that need to be made get announced in staff meeting, and we make the necessary adjustments. Absolutely, every
That's
week.
great. Let's talk. You talked a lot about, and I thank you for your time because I know you're incredibly busy. But I trust you. I trust you as a pastor, as a leader, as a thinker, and I just don't. In this season, we need trusted voices, trusted, experienced voices who has been there, done that. And I give our producers room to kind of bring people on. But if I don't trust them, I just don't believe in bringing them to the platform because I think it's critical.
No, I'm with you, man. I
Um,
trust you too. I trust you too.
so in terms of anything that churches can do in terms of multiple streams of income, or what do you think you've done? I know as a byproduct of you helping to decrease people's debt in First Baptist, that it
Yeah.
has helped the revenue in the church to increase. But are there any other suggestions or things that you've experienced that pastors can do, strategies that they can implement that will help increase revenue or develop more streams of revenue? That's what I want to get into as you get ready
Yeah.
to log
Yeah.
off and get to your other meeting. But I want to just get that because I think it's twofold. It's decreasing debt, but also increasing revenue. So any strategies, anything from your experience that you've done to increase revenue and to diversify the revenue?
Yeah. You put your finger on this thing, and prior to coming on, your folk told me that you wanted to talk about streams of income. And I don't talk about myself much, especially with people that I don't know and trust, but I know and trust you. So I decided, first time, I'd never done this before today. I decided to literally write down my streams of income because historically I'm a pastor, but I had a small church. They couldn't afford to pay me what I needed for a wife and twin sons. And so we had an arrangement, as long as I was there on Sunday and did my job, that, they didn't tamper with my teaching or preaching out. And most of my extra revenue came from preaching. So it was pastoring and preaching. But look at where we are today. You can't preach out. So if my only extra income came from preaching out, there's no place out to go. So I started some years ago with this whole multiple streams of income personally. And as a result of your invitation today, I realized I have 13 streams of income, which means that my outside speaking is gone, but I got 12 more streams. And none of those streams require leaving home. I've got an online course that I license to a website, and they pay me every 3 months to have their members watch it. So nobody does this better than T.D. Jakes. T.D. Jakes, I bet if he were to sit down, he probably had 36 streams of income. So if it's good for me, it's good for the church. And what I'm preparing to do now, in the next few weeks, I'll let you know about it. We're going to have a webinar for churches to talk about using their land. There are churches all across the country. I've got a church in Lake Charles, Louisiana, that owns 8 acres of land right downtown across the river from a major commercial development. You've got land right behind your building. When I came to your building, I saw that land back there. I said, I hope the church owns all of this. We've bought land, which is how we protected our neighborhood from gentrification. And we built 120 houses. We built senior housing. And so for churches that own land, I want them to figure out ways to either develop the land or form partnership with people and co-develop the land and let the land work for them. You know, when Ruth was instructed to Naomi to go over and glean from the field, Boaz owned the land. And if we own the land, then we should make the land work for us. And there's no better time than the present to have churches monetize the land and, by the way, use the development of that land for economic purposes that benefit our members and their businesses. So the first thing I would say is that what churches should not do is to use outside income to sustain its core business. But to the extent that churches have assets that the church has bought, assets that the church has inherited, we should become the developers or the co-developers of land, and that land can be a great blessing. Not only our churches, but our colleges. Look at what happened down in Texas. Which college was it? Was it Wiley College? Where they turned the football, they couldn't afford a football team. So they turned the football team into a farm. And now the students have internships and part-time jobs farming on the land, and the Dallas Cowboys and NFL buy their collard greens and food from the college. The land was just sitting there. So I think as a priority, we need to look at the assets we have, particularly the real estate assets, and develop strategies to develop that land. God is not making any more land. And land is what we need for housing, it's what we need for businesses, and it's what we need to generate revenue.
Wow. So you're going to do, you got a workshop coming in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
That you're going to go in
couple
more
weeks.
detail.
In fact, I've got a call tonight. I've got a call tonight with an attorney who is on my foundation board, and he's pulling together the details for us. And we're going to have investors come on the webinar to explain to churches what they're looking for to bring their investment capital to partner with churches to develop land. Yes, sir.
That's absolutely incredible. And again, I know you got something coming where you're going to go in more detail, but just dropping that one nugget so far has positioned us and kind of got some leaders to reimagine what they could do, what they have. And I just thank you for, most importantly, your time, because I value time. Second, I thank you
my
for
time is yours.
Your accessibility, being accessible to us. And then most importantly, your example and your experience, because I think if you want to become something, you gotta model it, you gotta see it. And the more you're around greatness and the more you're around experience that's seasoned and that's mature and proven, then those principles and those qualities can certainly be transferable. So I just want to thank you again just for your time, because I know you're incredibly busy. Is there any one last word? Because we're going to certainly make sure we push and make our audience available of the workshop when it's coming next time very aggressively. But if there's anyone, one last word of wisdom, encouragement,
one last word,
and churches who are trying to navigate.
My last word is this: I intend to retire from First Baptist on November the 15th, and the one desire I have before I leave is for Dewey Smith to come to New Jersey and preach from that pulpit. That's my last.
Well, you gotta ask me for a heart. Ask me for a heart thing. That's ask me something hard. That's simple. You just say the word.
Well, but let me say this though.
Honor.
Yeah. Let me say this. Paul told the Corinthian church that God always has a way out. And that's really my last word. I don't care how difficult the challenge. I don't care how thin the offerings get. I don't care how long the pandemic lasts. God has already created a way out. There's a way out. And our faith in God should not be limited to God blessing us with what we want today. But our faith in God should give us the assurance that there is a way out, and on the other side of every storm, there's a better day than the day before the storm. So that's my word, especially the pastors, who lose sleep over this stuff. See, our deacons and our trustees, they're with us and they pray for us, but they go to bed and go to sleep. And we're up
Right.
tossing and turning. And if we do go to sleep, we dream about the work. So there's a way out. And sometimes the way to the way out comes from an unlikely source. So hang in there. And, we sing all them songs, the Lord will make a way somehow. He may not come when he want him. Now it's time for all those slogans and all those songs to become our functional reality. Yes, sir. So
Listen,
thank you. Keep doing what you
you
do, but pace yourself because we
yes,
need
sir.
you to be a long distance winner. All right.
Yes. Thank you so much. Friends,
All right, sir.
if you haven't been inspired, if you've been watching this and you haven't been inspired by Dr. DeForest B. Soares, I don't know what to tell you. We're trying to bring you some content, and I know I've been blessed in every principle. I'm like a sponge to every word. We're going to implement it, and what he has done, not just in his church, but in my church and many others across the world, our members have been blessed and empowered. And today we want to empower the institution and the church. And so I hope you've been inspired by it. Dr. Forrest has a webinar coming in a couple of weeks. We're going to keep you abreast of it. And hope you've been impacted, positive by this episode of Financial Freedom. We're going to close this broadcast now, but always remember this. If you be good to God, God will be good to you. We're going to make it through it
Yes,
one
sir.
step at a time. Peace. Until next time. God bless you.
God bless.